It's already unusual, and often headline news, when a single person goes missing without explanation. Even stranger, however, are cases in which multiple people seem to vanish without a trace. Of particular significance might be when 3 people go missing all at once. Bad luck, after all, is said to arrive in threes. The Springfield Three. 2 friends, Suzanne Streeter and Stacy McCall, accompanied by Streeter's mother, Cheryl Levitt, were reported missing from Levitt's house in Springfield, Missouri on June 8, 1992. All of their personal items were left behind, and there were no signs of struggle nor violence, except for a broken porch light and a strange message that had been left on the answering machine. The message, however, had been mysteriously erased before the police arrived. At the time of their disappearance, Levitt was a 47-year-old cosmetologist and single parent, reportedly very close to her 19-year-old daughter, Suzanne Streeter. Stacy McCall was 18. Both teenagers had just graduated from the Kickapoo High School 2 days before their disappearance. They were last seen on June the 7th around 2 a.m., leaving their graduation towards a sleepover at a friend's house, Janelle Kirby. After they arrived, they decided to instead stay at Streeter's place because too many people were at Kirby's. The investigating officers were convinced the women made it to the house at 1717 East Delmar Street after their party, wearing clothes from the night before. The last reported communication from Levitt gave no indication of distress, though, and other clues were hard to come by, as the scene had been compromised since their friends entered the house before calling the police. The next morning, at 9 a.m. to be precise, Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend arrived at the house to pick up the girls. She said that they'd planned to spend the day together at a water park. Kirby reportedly found the front door unlocked before entering, yet there were no signs of the women inside. Even their cars were parked outside. The glass cover of a porch light had been broken, and Kirby's boyfriend swept it up before realizing both girls were actually missing. Inside, they found Levitt's Yorkshire Terrier, which Kirby stated seemed agitated. While in the house, Kirby answered 2 mysterious calls, which she described as, quote, strange and disturbing, from a man making obscene comments. Janice McCall, Stacy's mom, went to the house a few hours later after repeatedly calling her daughter without success. She noticed that both women's purses had been left on the living room floor. Their cigarettes had also been left behind, and her daughter's clothes from the night before were neatly folded. Janice called the police to report them missing. Afterwards, she listened to a, quote, strange message from June the 5th, with disturbing content quite similar to that of the calls attended by Kirby. Unfortunately, the message was inadvertently deleted, compromising more evidence before the police arrived. More than 16 hours had gone by since the 3 women were last seen. All investigations proved to be inconclusive, including a tip from a psychic who pointed detectives to a newly built parking structure near the scene of the disappearances. Ground-penetrating radar suggested 3 forms might be under the concrete, but permission was never obtained to dig in the area. In 1997, a convicted kidnapper, Robert Craig Cox, claimed to know what actually happened to them and stated that they would never be found. The Fort Worth Missing Trio. On December 23, 1974, 17-year-old Mary Rachel Terlicha, 14-year-old Lisa Renee Wilson, and 9-year-old Julie Ann Moselt disappeared without a trace from the Seminary South Shopping Center in Fort Worth, Texas, after Christmas shopping. The girls had been driving in a 1972 Oldsmobile 98, which was left abandoned in Sears' parking lot. All 3 had headed out that morning to do some Christmas shopping. Julie Ann had insisted on tagging along at the very last minute, although her mother reluctantly allowed her to go, on the condition that she would return by 6 p.m. Julie Ann's mother later stated that she was familiar with Renee and her mother, but was not acquainted with Mary Rachel Terlicha. The 2 teenagers had planned to return by 4 p.m. so they could attend a party with Renee's boyfriend, who had given her a promise ring earlier that day. At first, the girls went to the Army-Navy store in Fort Worth and continued their shopping trip at the mall, where several witnesses saw them. Their worried families went to the mall in search of their teenage daughters, only after none of them had come back home before 6. They found the car still parked. Evidence suggested that the girls had returned to it throughout the day, where several purchases were found inside. The police first assumed them to be runaways, an argument that may have delayed and possibly affected the investigation. The next day, Terlicha's husband received a letter allegedly from her saying, quote, "I know I'm going to catch it, but we had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears' upper lot. Love, Rachel." The letter was written in ink, while the envelope was written in pencil and was strangely addressed to Thomas A. Tierlicha, even though Rachel used to refer to him as Tommy. The L in their last name had been misspelled and written over, and the postmark had a blurred, inconclusive zip code with no city established. Handwriting experts from the FBI could not determine whether she had actually composed the letter. The families of the missing girls never believed that they ran away. Several sets of 3 skeletons have since been found throughout the state of Texas, but none of them were ever linked to the Fort Worth missing trio. The Lost Boys of Hannibal. 3 boys, 10-year-old Billy Hogue, 13-year-old Joey Hogue, and 14-year-old Craig Dowell, went missing from the Southside neighborhood in Hannibal, Missouri, after reportedly entering the Mark Twain Cave Complex on May 10, 1967. They often explored the caves, using an illuminated ladder to reach cave entrances otherwise unreachable. That day, witnesses reported seeing them carrying flashlights and a shovel in search of adventure, but they never returned. As they didn't go back home for supper, their parents began a search which promptly caught the media's attention and drew volunteers from all around. The Mark Twain Emergency Squad was the first to respond, but their efforts were unsuccessful. Thousands of dollars were poured into fruitless search and rescue efforts. People from all across the country provided leads that were equally useless. Most of the search attempts focused on the caves, which could be entered by Birch Street. It's been theorized that they could have been trapped in one of the small caves that were found when government crews conducted explosions in the area to build a highway. Several of those cave entrances had been sealed, and intense rediscovery efforts had many of them unsealed. Train routes from Hannibal and the nearby woods were also extensively searched. Recent exploration of the caves has failed to reveal any clues as to what happened to the 3 boys. It's now believed that they most likely never made it to the caves to begin with. Several different people have reported visions that the boys somehow ended up on an orange rail car. The Melvindale Trio. The greatest non-criminal manhunt in Michigan was launched after 2 women, 42-year-old Mrs. Artie Mabey and 35-year-old Margaret Redden, were reported missing from Melvindale along with a young man, 24-year-old Thomas Lorimer. The disappearance reportedly took place on October 15, 1937, and garnered considerable national attention. It's been confirmed that the 2 women arrived at the Hollywood Cafe in Melville on the 14th, where they joined Lorimer. Mrs. Artie Mabey reportedly met him for the first time that same day. At 1 a.m., they all left together in his car for 2 hours and returned at 3 a.m. to the cafe. They interacted with officers Harry Bringleson and Leonard Anderson when they were pulled over by a police car, as it was a strange hour to be driving around. The officers reported nothing seeming amiss and chatted with the 3 occupants briefly. They wrote down a description of the 1937 Oldsmobile and its license plate numbers, but took no further action. 2 theories about what happened to both women gained the most traction. The first was that they'd been targeted by an experienced criminal. The other was that they had run away together to escape their lives. The second theory would be seemingly contradicted by allegations that they took neither packed clothes nor money with them. Mrs. Mabey's car was parked by the cafe, and she'd even left a dental plate at the dentist for repairs, suggesting she had no intention of running away. A massive search was launched, even expanding to California when an unchecked source reported that they had crossed into Mexico. There was no trace of them in California, and no evidence linking them to the border. It's also been theorized that they could have crossed through Arizona, where the border is not patrolled. Both the Detroit and Rouge rivers were searched, and ever since, several cars have been recovered from their depths. Further baffling investigators, the fathers of the 2 women also vanished without a trace at approximately the same time, without any apparent connection with the women's disappearance. The Burning Car Trio. A lone boy was found asleep inside a box on the porch of a house in Potomac Avenue in Buffalo, New York, on Monday, September 16, 2019. The boy from Florida had been traveling with his parents, 24-year-old Nicole Marie Merced Plaude and 31-year-old Miguel Anthony Valentin Colon. They were also in the company of a family friend, 29-year-old Damiel Roman Audifred. All the adults were missing. Investigators found 4.4 pounds of cocaine inside a cooler and another empty cooler next to it. Both were inside the hotel room where the family had been staying, near the Buffalo Niagara International Airport. The family of the missing couple stated that they routinely went on spontaneous road trips for weeks. They also shared that the couple had taken a rental car because Valentin Colon's car was in for service. Family members last heard from the trio on September 15th at 6 p.m. when Valentin Colon had an unremarkable phone call with his sister. The police eventually located the rented white Chrysler Pacifica after it had been set on fire. Surveillance footage was retrieved and released, showing 2 people walking away from the burning car. One of them held the small boy's hand, while the other moved 2 cans of gasoline. The boy was placed in the care of Erie County Child Protective Services and following an initial request denial by a judge, was handed over to his grandparents in October.